Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Prime Pediatric Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Skip Weiss, and I am super excited, incredibly elated. I have the amazing Dr. Erik Cabral. Oh, sorry, not doctor. I'm so used to talking to doctors. I have Erik Cabral here. You
Yes.
guys, on this podcast, you guys have heard me do this tons of times, from Brian Gelke to everyone just messing this up. But I have Erik Cabral with us. Erik is an amazing, amazing person. He is an absolute podcast engineering juggernaut, just extremely smart with personal branding. And Erik, I am so happy you're here. How are you doing, brother? It's so nice to see you.
Yeah, it's so good to see you again, man. Like we were talking before the cameras and the mics turn on. I'm like, dude, talk about branding. Like I love your brand. I love what you represent and I love how you show up. So thanks for having me, brother.
I really appreciate it. And everybody knows that on this podcast, I try to bring in people that are outside of the chiropractic profession that give us a brand new look as to how we do things in our offices, but more importantly, like how can we increase ourselves? Because trying to actually cut through the fog, cut through the minutia of other practices and people in our communities, how do we effectively cut through it? And I brought in Erik because he's an amazing personal branding strategist. And Erik, what would be your, right off the bat, give us a little background on yourself, what you've done. I know in the podcast world, you have an amazing podcast. Tell us a little bit about everything.
Yeah. I'll try to speed through and not bore all the folks here. So hopefully they stick at least till the end of this story, and then I'll earn my keep from there. But yeah, I was in corporate America, brother, for over 20 years. You know, just spinning the wheels and just not a happy person because I lacked fulfillment basically. So it got to the stage where I climbed the corporate ladder to the point where I had achieved the highest position that I could in the creative industry. So I was like a creative director in like the number one pharma company in the world at the time. And then they laid me off, and they gave me the the ability to lay off my team all in
What a
phases. They're like,
what a
so
gift.
you, Erik, yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for laying me off, and then giving me 3 months to lay the entire team off that I had built, not just by myself, but with obviously a lot of support from a team. And it was during that phase, Dr. Skip, that I was like, what do I do with myself? I need something bigger and better. And I decided to turn down the job offers I was getting and start my own business. And that was in 2017. And I learned how to buy and invest in real estate, and bought a multi-family. That was my first project. I bought an apartment building, and then I learned a ton from it. A lot of mistakes learned, a lot of lessons learned there from my mistakes. And then I was blessed to buy the second oldest winery in the country, along with on that property, 248 plus acres, a 50-room hotel, a golf course, a full golf course, and we learned a ton there as well. I did not that is not my hands. Like someone else, a business partner of mine, he's the expert in all of that. But with that being said, throughout that whole journey and process, Dr. Skip, I realized I need to document my journey because there's so much going on. People would say, dude, I don't understand what you're doing. Are you a creative guy, a graphic design guy, are you a web guy, your logos, or are you a real estate investor? I see you walking around on these properties and posting stuff. So in order to tell my story so that people knew more clearly or had more clarity around what I do, because I was doing a lot at the time, I said, let me just start a podcast. So that's where I would point people. I would say, hey, go check out Entrepreneur Circle and you'll hear the story there. I tell it in 30 seconds. And they're like, oh, okay. And that's really, truly what was the catalyst for it. I didn't realize it was going to create an entire company.
I think that's like the catalyst behind it, though, is that you were given the opportunity to be laid off, which does suck, but the universe and God's smiling on you in that, right? So we're going to move you down a different road. You get the opportunity of letting people go, which is going to make you grow, which sucks. Okay. But then more importantly, you took all of this avenue and created this property, basically this real estate company, which I was reading on, which is reminds me a lot of myself. And then now you've started this media company. So let's transition into personal branding, because I know that cutting through the fog of everything and creating a personal brand, hence myself, bowtie chiropractor, like what I do, kind of audacious with my clothing and bright colors and stuff, because that's just who I am. I don't like normal. I don't like simple. I like complex. Let's talk about branding. And you talked about how you built your brand. So how did you cut through the fog right away?
Yeah. So I had a bit of a head start because that was my career. I was branding huge Fortune 500 companies, and all the brands within those companies, and working at ad agencies in Manhattan and New Jersey and Philadelphia. So I got a lot of experience in branding in general. Never really truly for personal brands. Like that to me was Tony Robbins, Oprah Winfrey, Emerald, like those things. In 2017, there weren't really people who, there were influencers, right? That the influencers. And I guess we could have categorized them back then as personal brands, but that term wasn't being used yet. So as I started to develop my podcast, it started to reach people, and then I started to position myself as a thought leader within the real estate investing space. I also started to recognize that I was being recognized in the marketing space. So that's where I was like, oh, I'm now more intentional with what I'm talking about. Now I'm going to show the zeros and the ones behind what I'm doing in real time. So then that's when people started to come to me for advice. I see what you're doing. I love what you're doing. Can you help me with exactly what you're doing? Whatever you did for yourself, can you do that for me? So then me became we, and all of a sudden On Air Brands started to flourish because I was basically giving them the tools and the knowledge that I was learning on the fly directly, and building packages and service behind everything I was doing for myself.
So when you're building these on-air brands and you're talking to docs, I'm assuming podcasts. Do you recommend this right off the bat? I personally believe all chiros should have some form of podcast, whether it's in the form of the chiropractic space or more importantly in their community. What's your thought process on that, Erik?
So I shared with you, and it's like, what was there, 250 plus amazing people at the
It's
Black
Sales
Diamond Club.
Matters with Black Diamond Club. That was amazing. You lit that room on fire, bro. And I'm gonna ask you that. I really want to ask you your personal story with birth, but which will really resonate with my audience. But yeah, go right. Yeah. So you were there, 250 people. That was an amazing event.
There's and I was blessed. Sean and Lacey are amazing. Big shout out to them. I love them a ton. And the community now. You guys are amazing. Everybody there in that room, just big hearted individuals that just want to help the world. I recognize that right away. So what I was sharing, some of the things is frightening in terms of if you don't take action for your personal brand. And there were studies done. There was a study done by brand builders that spoke to over 1,000 people that was centered around what they feel and what they think about in terms of your personal brand. So what the study showed is that boomers, baby boomers, that generation, and then my generation of Gen X, some of them consider, if not most of them, consider personal branding, podcasting, putting yourself out there and pounding your chest and celebrating your wins in public is bragging.
Mm-hmm.
It's bragging. But the millennials and the Gen Zs right behind them they do not view it that way. They view it as a necessity, and that they expect it in their chiropractor, in their attorneys, in their market, whoever it is. They resonate with the companies and the people and the solopreneurs that have the digital breadcrumbs that lead to them, that tell their story, that share their core values, their beliefs. And then if they align with those beliefs, they go and they do business with you eventually.
Yes.
So now what we need to do is recognize, Dr. Skip, that why wouldn't we put ourselves out there, even though it may be uncomfortable, to the people who are making all the financial decisions over the next 20 to 30 years? Because if we don't, my prediction is that we will become irrelevant. We will be invisible if we don't put content out there starting today, because there's going to be someone who does exactly what you do in your space, in your town, that already has a personal brand, or they're establishing a personal brand.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And in fact, I was having this conversation with my wife, Dr. Julie, the other day, and I talked to a lot of chiros. I get to go on other stages and teach a lot of continuing ed, Erik, with adjusting kids and in pediatrics. And I'm pretty sought after in this space for that educational component. But what breaks my heart is when I meet older docs that are in their 60s and they're just seeing 60-year-old patients that are on Medicare and Medicaid. And they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, Skip, I just want you to know, like, I used to see tons of kids when I was younger. And what happens, and this will happen to you, Skip, is that you're going to age with your patients. So as you age, your patients will age. And I find that what rung in my head right away was you never marketed to the people that were younger than you. You never set yourself out. So what happened is you got comfortable with everybody your age and you developed really good relationships with them. But eventually, just like any church, you can't build a church based off the elderly. You build a church based off of families and kids. So if I want to talk to kids, if I want to come in and talk to the younger adults, the younger parents now that are in their 20s, I need to be able to talk to them. And that's why I brought Erik on, for everybody to understand this, because we have to be able to market into this different echelon, because I'm 40. So I am what they call an elder millennial. Okay. I'm the old millennial, barely made the cut. I'm not an X, and I'm definitely not a Z. But I heard a guy by the name of Connor Blakely. I don't know if you know who he is, Erik. Amazing dude. He spoke at summer camp 2 years ago. He was talking about Gen Zs because he's a Gen Z expert. And he self-proclaimed, but I 100% agree with him. He was saying that Gen Zs use all of our digital footprint to immediately download whether or not they want to do business with us immediately. And he said they do it within 5 minutes. He said if you've got stuff online, if you've got TikTok, and this is when TikTok was first starting about 2 years ago, if you've got TikTok, if you've got Instagram, if you've got all these little feeds and reels for people to just quickly screen who you are, it immediately filters out whether or not they're going to do business with you at all. But when they do business, they become extremely loyal.
And how do they remain loyal, right? That's a different sort of challenge. But I mean, I'm putting the question out there, so I'll provide one of the answers, and that is continuing to add value,
exactly,
in some way,
yep.
in your expertise, right? We're not asking people to put themselves out there and speak about things they're not comfortable talking about.
Right.
Now, if you are a chiropractor and you're in the age of, the baby boomer category, well, you have you're a Jedi master. And you have a ton of knowledge that you need to share to the Padawans. You have to give the knowledge. That is the most fulfillment that I get when I can coach someone who is a millennial, who is a Gen Z coming up. I'm constantly getting calls from people in that category, and I just give. And the thing is, that's how you can continue to provide value. And like you said, to air quote market that demographic.
Yes.
So exactly. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it authentically, and it also is a way to provide fulfillment and purpose for you.
Exactly. And you had talked, one of the really interesting things about your talk at sales was talking about the stats behind even income demographics and the people that actually listen to podcasts, and they have more income. They have they are avid. They're more in the not entrepreneurial, but career space, where they're higher paid. They're going to be more avid with a family. Like, these are all people that I believe is the direct target audience of family practice doctors. And would you agree with that?
100%. So the statistics, and these are rough because I don't have my numbers in front of me, but the average podcast listener has a college education. So they have a degree and they have a $75,000 household income. That is what I recall. It could, give or take, 5 or 10,000. But these are typically the people that I see as people that we can help, right? These are people that have the education and understand what we do. And then also the means to help, the means to invest, or the means to join your practice, to do whatever. So yeah, it's more than, Dr. Skip, the audience. For me, podcasting, or having the opportunity, is having the opportunity to have a conversation with someone like this, right? So why would you and I even have a conversation? We've spoken at an event, but beyond that, right? You're in Wisconsin, I'm in New Jersey. How does that work, right? Well, we shook hands and you said, "Hey, brother, I'm going to reach out and we're going to continue this conversation." What a wonderful way to continue a conversation, or to initiate a conversation with a thought leader, with an author that you admire, with someone and anyone that you would never think you'd have a one-on-one conversation with. But because of the simple fact that you have a platform, whether it's only your mother listening or there's thousands of listening, most likely they will say yes.
Yeah.
They will say yes for the simple fact that you're giving them something, which is an opportunity to share their story. And who doesn't want to do that? Most people do want to do that, especially if they have a lot to share, a lot of
I
knowledge.
love it. I love sharing stories. I've been interviewed probably on 20 different podcasts. And it's always fun because I've interviewed and given interviews. And interviewing's fun. Being interviewed is even more fun because I can just riff and have just a great time, and the conversations go everywhere. Canned questions kind of drive me nuts, just like this one. Like I don't like canned questions because to me it's not really that organic. But I love the fact that I can bridge the gap and talk to anybody I want and offer them a service to come on with me and introduce you to everybody that I know and love and care about, because I believe the message that you've got is needed for them. And it just lifts them up too. And it's that whole adage of Michael Chandler, great dude, know him, UFC fighter, amazing person. He has a tagline. He always says, see you at the top. Not I'm at the top looking down at you, see you at the top. I want to bring everybody up with me. So when I look right and I look left, I see hundreds of chiropractors, hundreds of family practice people that love people, love taking care of them. And they're all right there shoulder to shoulder with me. And we're helping out everyone. And that's the key, Eric. So how can we take this personal brand now and how do we amplify it? Like, how do we pimp this thing out and just ring it? Like, what do we do here?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, for the majority of the people I'm guessing listening, don't even realize what a personal brand is. So let's identify that as your online reputation. Just simply your online digital representation of you, the digital breadcrumbs that lead to you. It's what I always say. So if you have a business, if you have something that you can provide to others that help them in some way, shape, or form in their life or in their business or both, then we have to create content. That's just the way it is now. You creating content. And the old adage, oh, content is king. That still reigns true because there's so much out there. And that's what a lot of people hesitate. They're like, but there's so much out there. It doesn't matter because all you need are your close family and friends to start watching. And then it will start to spread word of mouth. And the thing is, even if there's 30, 40, 50, 100 people that listen to your podcast or watch your content on a weekly basis, well, imagine yourself on a stage where there's 50 to 100 people listening to every word you say for an hour.
Yeah.
I think most people will jump at that opportunity, right?
I know I do.
Yeah, exactly. You create your own stage, and you, Dr. Skip, have created your own stage with your podcast, with your platform, with the content. So what I'm getting to is the podcast is just the means to an end, which is creating content. And then on top of that, it's creating micro content because the content is the podcast.
Yep.
It's a half hour, it's 45 minutes, it's an hour. But what we do in my company, we chop that up a la Joe Rogan style, a la Tim Ferriss, where now that one conversation that was had, now you and I are going to leave after this and we're going to go about our day and business and families. My team is going to go chop I liken it to the Keebler elves, right? You and I are going to deliver cookie batter and chips and all and the butter and whatever. And I put it into the tree and then out comes the cookies. And then not only that, I don't have to go to the tree and get the cookies. They're going to deliver it. They're going to go in the neighborhood and they're going to just start passing it around. That is what we do. And that's what everyone needs to do because you make it easy for yourself. That's the biggest thing. The big hurdle is that people think, oh, I have to do this. I got to edit. I got to write the show notes. I got to do all this stuff. How do I get it out there? No, find a team, find someone, hire a VA, anyone that can help you to do this. Because if you have a lot that you can share and help people with in terms of your knowledge and expertise, it's your duty to share it. It's your duty to give to others so that they can find the answers, right? And you could be the catalyst for that. So that's what I recommend is think of it as a place for you to develop content. And then that content gets delivered on a daily, weekly basis while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
You're creating an army of salespeople, an army of brand champions, right? As you sleep.
Keebler elves. I love it. That is the best. That is the best. That is awesome. Because you put it all in the tree and it just comes out. And that's like, but what you don't want is Snap, Crackle, and Pop to show up. And now they got a war going on over who likes Rice Krispies over the Keebler elves, but all of them work together. All of them work together. But that's
Exactly.
exactly it, guys. And when we're sitting here and talking with Erik, and it's phenomenal because I hear this time in and time out where docs want to do a podcast and then they'll just say, Skip, I don't have time, or I don't know how to do it. And there's really simple steps that you can take to get it going. Yeah, there's a small amount of legwork if you want to deal with Apple and get things on their platforms, and you got some applications and you got to wait, and like it goes in there. Like I get all that. I went through that. But there's also tons of stuff you can do that allows you then, once you have the little bit of foundational legwork done, you can amplify it on so many different channels. But the other thing is having the people that are better than you at it do it for you. Just use your voice, talk about what you got to talk about, because we're all experts in what we know best, whether it's family, chiropractic, people around you, friendships, relationships, business, real estate. We've all got some form of story to tell. And a lot of the times it's not just chiropractic. Like, I'm not just a chiropractor. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I invest in stuff all over the place. I listen to amazing people like Erik. I have amazing coaches, and I want people to be around it. So now that we have a team in place, what would be your best suggestion as to vetting the right people so we can get the team in place? Or actually, let's go back to one easier step. When a doc wants to start a podcast, what do you recommend is the simplest way for them to start?
So in terms of tactics, that's easy, right? You can literally pick up your phone and start recording,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's through your voice app, and then you can figure out how to upload. For me, the simplest way and how I started was, there was an app called Anchor.
Yeah.
And it was recently bought by Spotify. And that is a wonderful tool. It doesn't cost anything. And you can literally use your phone and start recording, and it will upload for you to Spotify. That's a wonderful way to just get it out of the way and not think about it. Now, you can continue doing that, but how are people even going to know it exists, right? You have to promote it. Like, that's the key thing. So I highly recommend people just get started. But if you want to take this seriously, and what will happen is if you do take it seriously, it will become a business. It will become an income generating revenue source for you if done right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying like we're in it for the money. What I'm saying is eventually it can pay for itself
Yes, it
over
can.
time. Over time, it will,
Mm-hmm.
because there's going to be wonderful things that happen as a result. And it's not through sponsorships. People are always like, how do I get an ad on my show? I'm like, do not think about that right now. What you want to do is add value, 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 value. And eventually you give something to the audience that they will be more than happy to invest in, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
a $50, white paper, something, anything that you can give them, a course, whatever it is, they will buy it because you've been providing free information for them. And now you're helping them to implement those ideas and that information. That's what people will pay for, not information. Back up, Skip. What was the other the original question?
So
I'm going down rabbit
you
holes.
nailed getting started easy, and I knew you'd go right with Anchor because Anchor is so simple.
Yeah.
But then once they go from that now and they've started their own podcast and they get that rolling, what's the next simple steps to take them putting it out there? What do you recommend?
So I mentioned getting a VA, right? So hiring a VA is
Vetting that
great.
VA. Okay.
Vetting the VA. So you're going to find a lot of people that claim that they're podcast experts and marketing experts. There's no way to vet that. If they're in the Philippines or South America, you can ask for their work. You're like, hey, what podcasts do you edit? So that's one thing. I do that. People still reach out to me and they're like, hey, I do this, and I'm like, who do you help? If especially they help someone that I already know, then I go reach out to that person. And I go, hey, this guy's been reaching out saying he's your marketing guy on Instagram. And then he'll go, yeah, he's great. So that's a wonderful way to do it too. If they're in your space, you can find them and ask directly who they're claiming to help. That's one thing. If you don't want to do that, because there's a lot of people that are like, how do I do that? How do I weed through dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of applicants? There are VA companies out there that will do that for you. I have a friend who owns a business that does that, and I just use him, and I pay him $1,000. He finds someone. He weeds through hundreds of candidates, gives me the top 3 to 5. I do those he even sets up the interviews, and then I say, I love this one, and then we go. Here's the cool thing about his business, and I don't know what the other ones do, is that if you're not happy, he will give you your $1,000 back or find you a replacement. So looking for those type of people to help you weed through all the resumes and all the applicants and making sure that you get the right person. Or the next level is us, like a company like ours that is just turnkey, done for you, educating and coaching you through the process so that you have clarity before you start. That's the biggest problem, Dr. Skip. People
Yep.
go in and they don't know what they want to talk about. They don't know the theme of the show, what their core values are, what the pillars of content are. There's like all these things that they're like, what are you talking about? So when you want to take it to the next level and you know this could be something big for you, I highly recommend doing a lot of front work, all the heavy lifting in the first 6 to 8 weeks prior to launching a podcast if you want to do it correctly.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Like having that content there. The other side of it is generating content. I see a lot of docs that I don't want to say they're flash in the pans, but they'll do 10, 12 episodes and then it's done. And I'm like, what just happened? Like you were just, and here's the thing, you were just on the cusp, and the cusp is actually at like 25 to 30. And that's where you can actually start making a dent and an impact. And I remember going back to when I first started this podcast almost 4 years ago, we were averaging small amounts of downloads, and then now we're getting thousands and thousands. But it's over time. And my mentor at that time was saying, Skip, you got to hit 26 to 30 shows before you're going to, one, hit your groove. And number two is it's just going to start coming easier and easier. And I kind of hearken it to rap music, and because those dudes, like you look at like Eminem or like Jay-Z or anybody in that world, they didn't just start writing raps. Like it took time, it took practice. Just like song artists, the ones that are actually writers, they need to get into a writer space to be able to produce lyrics, to be able to produce info and stuff that can be actually consumed. But it takes a constant mindset to do it. I can't just go and take care of patients and come in and knock a podcast out. Like my mind needs to be wrapped around what I'm doing and then go with it. And what I kind of find too for content for docs that are thinking about this right now, some of you, I know your wheels are spinning. Just talk about the questions that you get asked in your practice and turn them into 20-minute answers. Like that's the easiest thing to do. And you can easily bridge a gap right away. So once they found a good VA, once they found a lot of really good information and content, do you recommend then once they record their podcast, Erik, do they start putting out blogging with it? Do they start turning it into actual readable material? What's your thought process there?
Yeah. The more you can repurpose that information and that recording that you created, whether it's an interview or a solo cast, because I love your advice there. It is a really good avenue. If it's intimidating, I don't know who I'm going to interview. You don't have to do an interview style podcast. You can do a solo cast where you speak 5 to 20 minutes, half hour of you sharing your experience and your journey. And that can be done if you have clarity in your message and you identify the pillars of content that you know you're gonna pull from, and that's all done up front. So what I would say is you can record easily, but then what you want to also do, I wanted to back up to the idea that you're creating this content and the algorithm gods are going to love you for it. Why? Because the more you create, the more people can find you. Mm-hmm. Because Google, obviously the #1 search engine, YouTube's #2. So if you're repurposing your content and you're putting it on YouTube, not just Spotify and Facebook and Instagram, but you're leveraging all of the platforms, you will win the SEO challenge. You will be easy to find. So I'll say this, Dr. Skip. If someone like you or someone approaches me and they say, hey, can you be on my podcast? What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to Google them. Mm-hmm. If I don't find anything, I'm going to go, something's a little off here, right? And that's where people, when they look for businesses that they want to, they want to hire, they need a chiropractor, they need an attorney, they need someone. If you Google someone and you don't find anything, you're going to go to the next person. Or if you Google someone and they're like, hey, let's do business together, you're going to look them up. Mm-hmm. If you see you're not even going to listen to the podcast, but if you see they've been on episodes, you see they have their own podcast, automatic credibility, automatic trust, or at least building towards that trust. Mm-hmm. So we raise money for real estate deals, right? Our podcast was a huge lever to create know, like, and trust at speed. So by the time they came to an event, by the time they came into our community and they visited an investor event, they came up to us as fans and followers because they had been listening to us for months,
Yeah.
years. They know our values. They know that we're trustworthy. They know we're a faith. They know all these things about us. Why? Because I didn't read it. The book does the same thing. If you write a book, people automatically, when you're in the home, you're in the heart. It's the same thing. When you're in the earbuds, you're in the heart. You're like what you said, a musician, whether it's Eminem, Jay-Z, Pearl Jam, whoever it is. We love them and we get emotion from these people because it's an intimate form of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Skip and I literally, if you're not listening and watching, we have earbuds in.
Yep.
And that is speaking directly to them,
Mm-hmm.
right to their brains. And what happens is they have emotion based off those conversations and and what you're saying. And then by the time they meet you, they already want to do business with you.
Yeah.
So it's just that speed, the algorithm gods, putting yourself out there, leaving creating digital breadcrumbs so that they can find you when they're ready.
I'll tell you what, man, I did a monocast for 3 years. And for 3 years, I switched back and forth. My co-host at that time was Dr. Christina Stitcher. And it was another chiro that was a really close friend of mine, heavily involved in the pediatric space. And we just basically flipped podcast episodes off and on every other week and just altered back and forth. And what it allowed us to do, though, was just monocast. And we knew, but the thing is, we knew exactly what we wanted it to be. We knew exactly where we wanted it to go. And then we phased into another direction and brought in people that we could interview to bring in okay, so they heard 3 years of me talking about pediatric chiropractic, science, art, and philosophy of chiropractic and how we take care of all these kids. But then I'm like, okay, how can I bring in more and more business into my docs that are listening now? Because I want them to have another avenue of just more than what they just get in school, which is not this stuff right here. It's all about taking care of people, which is exactly our bread and butter. It's our mothership. It's what we are. But we need to know how do we get outside of our four walls. We need to know how we can make a bigger impact in our community. And how do we help as many people as we possibly can? I've got 2 goals in life now. Help as many people as I possibly can, including children, especially children, and then help as many chiropractors as I possibly can, see more kids and families in their practice. That's what we do. That's what I do. So taking that, and I'm proofing that. And then now we do interviews and we talk. And I love it because I get a chance to talk to people like you. And that's the coolest, most awesome thing. Now, I've got to ask you some personal questions, dude, because I heard that you know how to birth babies. Now, you got it. This is a family practice thing. These docs are going to eat this up. Will you please walk us through the birth of your child and what happened in the world of Erik Cabral?
Oh, man. And you've seen me tell the story from stage, and
Awesome.
I've had several requests to do it on a podcast. It doesn't translate as well because I run back and forth, I jump up and down. I can't do that here, so it won't be as effective. So if anyone hears this version of it, reach out to me. I will send you a video. There is a video on YouTube. I'll send you the link. I don't make it public. I send it to people who request it. There were people that weren't in the room during the sales conference with BDC, and that I sent it to them. They're like, I missed it. Everybody was telling me about it. And I said, don't worry, I'll send you a link. So my wife is obviously pregnant at this point, and I hear her in the bathroom. It's about 6-ish, 6:30 in the morning. And we have one child right now. She's sleeping. I think she's about 3 at the time. And she comes out and I'm like, what's going on? Are you okay? She's 9 months pregnant. And she's like, everything's cool. I was on the phone with the doctor and just getting some cramps and everything's fine, but we should probably start packing, but no rush. I feel good. I'm like, okay. So I get up, I wake up Veronica, start packing, putting stuff into the car, and I hear her upstairs. Ah! I start screaming. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I run upstairs. She's on her hands and knees. And she's like, this is so painful. And I'm like, what? Why? She's like, she's got her phone too. She's like documenting the time between contractions. So I'm like, everything cool? She's like, yeah, I'm good. Continue doing what you're doing. So go downstairs and I hear it again, but this time she's on the stairs coming down. Ah! So I run upstairs. I'm like, okay, this is no bueno. Like, I gotta help you come down the stairs. So we go down, and as we're walking into the kitchen And Veronica's freaking out. She's like, what's going on? What's happening, Mom? And I'm like, oh, Mommy and Daddy are leaving soon. Grandma's on her way. And you're going to stay here with Grammy while Mommy and I go to the hospital and bring your little sister to the world. And in that moment, Jane, my wife, whispers to me, I don't know if I'm going to make it. So that didn't even process. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I already see it in my head. I'm visualizing us in the hospital under the care of doctors and professionals who are going to take care of us, know what they're doing. And I'm like, no, we're going into the car. So I start putting her and helping, get Veronica into the car. And now I'm starting to panic a little bit. And I start the car and I look up into the rear view and I realize, oh, I didn't even open the garage. I open the garage. Now I'm like, I hit the gas and I see in the rear view, Grammy's pulling up. And I'm like, oh, great. I didn't even buckle Veronica in. So I'm glad so I open the door. I'm like, here, take Veronica. So I take Veronica. Now it's Fast and the Furious. I'm Vin Diesel and I'm like flying through the neighborhood. Very dangerous, but luckily it was early in the morning. And it's just like out of a movie, Doc. It was me going on shoulders, passing cars, honking the horn, and everything was grand until I hit the first light, the first red light, which I could not just speed through. I had sped through some in hopes that a cop would find me and give me an escort. But I had realized that the GPS was like, make a left. And I was like, wait, what? But I'm on the far right. There's 3 lanes for me to get to the left. So I had to notify everyone and roll down the window and yell over, I need to go left, pass it down. So they all let me go through and I sped through. So I'm looking at the GPS. There's roughly 12 minutes left. And I'm like, we could do this. And I'm not distracted by my wife in terms of how she's yelling and saying it's painful. I'm focused on the road. I want to get us there safe. I'm like caressing her head. I'm like, everything's fine, Jane. We're going to be okay. Don't worry. I got this. All of a sudden I see out of the corner of my eye, brother, her pulling her pants down, like shimmying her pants down. And I'm like, whoa, it's go time. So in an instant, I decide to pull over on the side of the road. Luckily, it wasn't a highway. It was somewhat of a neighborhood. And I kid you not, the seconds it took me to open my door and run around the back of the car to her took an eternity. It felt like 29 minutes. Because everything was in bullet time. I could see cars driving in slow motion. And I remember the face. I'll never forget of she looks like a doctor, or this one looks like they could help me. I look up at the house that we're parked in front of and I'm like, I can run up there and I could use their phone. I'm literally imagining me taking the phone off the kitchen wall, like it's 1992. And I'm like, oh, I have a phone. What am I doing? And by the time I realize all these thoughts and all these things that I'm trying to solve in microseconds, my hand is already on the door and I'm pulling it open and I look and there I see the inches of the head of our baby's head coming out. So I get down on my knees and I put my hand out so that she doesn't land into the dirty floor mat of the car. And she literally just slides into my arms. And in that moment, brother, it was me and the baby. There was nothing else. There was nothing. It was just us in heaven together, just quiet. And I looked down at her and I'm like, hey, you're here. Like, what a blessing. This is amazing. And when I finally snapped out of it, I look up and I realize I'm outside and it's fresh air and the sun has just come up and the birds are chirping and the butterflies are flying. And I'm like, wow, this is the most amazing experience I've ever had in my life. I've actually witnessed life happen and in nature the way it used to be, not under fluorescent lights and not under a whole team of people that, have, so it was a beautiful experience. And I looked down and I realized my wife was still there. I'm like, she needs help. And I need to get help. So I called 911. Long story short, everyone showed up within minutes. And they took care of Jane. They took care of the baby. Everyone always asked me what I did with the umbilical cord. And no, I did not snap it off with my teeth.
Bite it off.
I did not do that. I cut it like you normally would in the hospital. But the funny thing about it was, as they were tending to my wife and Natalie, is the amount of adulation and celebration from the pediatrics, from the from the cops. They were all taking selfies. They were all taking turns to take their own selfies and then group selfies. And I likened it to it felt like they were lifting me up on their shoulders and like, bro, he's a jolly good fellow, bro, like, giving me a cigar and handing me a chalice of wine. And it was amazing. And I looked over at my wife and she's getting, on the gurney and she's going into the ambulance. And there was a whole media frenzy afterwards. People were texting and calling like, did you know you're on the news? And to this day, my wife really resents this story because of the fact that they made it about me, and no one, and the wife, they'll mention my name, they'll mention Natalie's name, and they'll go, and the mother, So I always tell her, you are obviously the rock star. You are the goddess that created life and brought Natalie into the world. And when the police or 911 was asking me where I was, I always embedded like North Post and Ward. So it was like a cross street of North Post and Ward. And we didn't decide to name her Natalie North because I think the Kardashians and Kanye had named their kid North at the time. No, we did choose Ward. So Natalie Ward is her middle name, her first and middle name. And
I love that.
It's just a blessing, man. Blessing to experience that.
That's an amazing story. And when I heard you do it at sales, I was dying. Like in live, it's pretty amazing. And this was wonderful too, because I was reliving it again for the second time. But you got an opportunity to really see one of the most amazing gifts given by God is the birth of your child, and to see these kids in birth and to be a part of it and to be there firsthand and catch your baby. And like, that is phenomenal. And I remember the birth of both of my children. I remember the story behind it. I remember almost losing my wife with the second one. It's just, there's a lot there. But to be able to give those opportunities, and Erik, I can tell that you're an absolutely amazing person. And the fact that you've been on here means the absolute world to me. And with your company, On Air Brands, how can my docs that want to pursue things get going in this venture, get down this path to create a bigger impact in their communities? How do they get a hold of you? How do they work with you?
I thank you for that. And I'd love to hear more of your story as well, because you shared some things there that I'd love to know more about. But also, I want to give something to your audience, whether you want to get into podcasting or not. I highly recommend at least guesting on shows. Being a guest is a wonderful and easier sort of way to kind of introduce this to you, because what it does is it gets you to exercise your storytelling. It gets you comfortable on the mic, and starting to really hone in on and crafting stories, because that's really right. Stories sell. Was it facts tell, stories sell? So I want to give some podcasting tips that I've accumulated and created over the years. You can get that at ericcabral.co/guide. So ERIK CABRAL.co/guide. And that is a free PDF for your audience on how to be a best guest on podcasts, or how to be a great host on podcasts. Just all the stuff that I recommend that you do when creating content.
Awesome. That is exactly it. So everybody go out there. You need to check this out. Get over there to that website, get the free PDF, but more importantly, go explore what Erik's all about. It's ericcabral.co, and it's Erik with a K and Cabral with a C. And go over there and just see what this guy's all about. See this face, see this giant ball of light, this smile that he's got on his website, man. If you can't look at that and see, one, he's incredibly intelligent, passionate, amazing human being, but two, he's a giant child like myself. You can just see the sparkle in his eye, that that there's a lot of good information that's going to get dropped, but there's always nonsense working in the back of the head too, to have fun.
So true.
Like the Keebler elves in the tree. I love it. And Erik, thank you so much for coming on with me. It truly means a lot. The 40 minutes that we just spent together, I know will directly impact thousands of chiropractors' lives and the children that they take care of. So please hang your hat on that, knowing that you directly affected hundreds and hundreds of newborn babies, thousands of children, and thousands of families just in the minutes that you got to spend with me and talk. It means the world to me. And I just got goosebumps thinking about that, man. I've never told anybody that, but thank you so much. And this is episode 200. This is my 200th episode, and I couldn't think of more of a better, awesome guest than you to be on. So thank you so much for being here in humbling me and being on this show.
It's been a blessing and an honor, brother. And thank you for allowing and inviting me to celebrate this 200 with you, brother. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. Now, everybody, go out there, get it done. Take care, everybody. Bye.